James and I were happy, or at least I thought we were. When he proposed, I believed I'd found the person who would finally pull me from the shadows that had haunted me since my father's death. But it didn't take long after the wedding for the cracks to show. James had always spoken about his mother with an intensity that bordered on disturbing, but I brushed it off as grief. She had died a few years ago, and he still carried that loss like a wound that never healed. When he insisted we move into her old house, I hesitated. There was something unsettling about it, something I couldn't quite put my finger on, but James was adamant. "It's our home now," he said, his voice soft yet firm. I agreed, wanting to support him, to be the understanding wife. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew I'd made a mistake. The house was suffocating. It reeked of dust and mildew, the air thick with decay and something else, something rotten. The walls seemed to close in on me as soon as we entered, and the dark corners of each room felt like they were watching me, waiting. That first night I struggled to sleep. James left the bedroom door ajar and whispered, "Good night, Mommy," into the darkness. His voice was childlike, a strange, eerie tone that sent a shiver down my spine. I turned to him, expecting to see a hint of humor in his eyes, but there was none. He was serious, his face blank, almost vacant. I wanted to ask him about it, but fear kept my mouth shut. I didn't want to know the answer. The days turned into a nightmare. Every attempt I made to change or decorate the house was met with resistance. "Mommy wouldn't approve," James would say, his tone flat and lifeless. It wasn't just a phrase. He believed it. The house was a shrine, untouched and unchangeable, a monument to his mother that I was forbidden to alter. The first time something truly terrifying happened, I was alone in the kitchen. I heard a voice, a soft, hissing whisper, calling my name. "Sarah." It was faint, almost imperceptible, but unmistakably real. I spun around, but the room was empty. My heart pounded as I searched the house, finding nothing but silence. I tried to tell James, but he brushed it off, his eyes darkening with something I couldn't place. "You shouldn't be afraid," he said. "She's just trying to get to know you." That night, I lay awake, staring at the door James had once again left slightly open. I heard it again, the same voice, closer this time. "Sarah, you don't belong here." The air in the room grew colder, the shadows deepened. I felt her before I saw her, a figure, tall and thin, standing just beyond the door. Her face was hidden in the darkness, but I could feel her eyes on me, burning with hatred. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was paralyzed with fear. Then she was gone, the room plunging into an unnatural stillness. The next day I found the diary. It was hidden in the attic, beneath a pile of dusty, moth-eaten clothes. My hands shook as I opened it, the pages brittle and yellowed with age. It belonged to James's mother, and, as I read, a sense of dread clawed at my insides. The early entries were mundane, the ramblings of a lonely woman who had lost her husband and devoted herself entirely to her only child. But as I read on, the tone shifted. Her words grew more possessive, more desperate. She wrote about James in ways that made my skin crawl, how no one else could love him the way she did, how he was hers and hers alone. There were entries about her touching him, about the way he responded, confused and frightened, but always obedient. And then there were the rituals, dark, twisted rituals to bind them together forever. She wrote about blood, about how she made him promise to never leave her, how she would make sure they were never apart, even in death. As I read, a realization struck me, a horrible, gut-wrenching truth. She had never really left. The house was her tomb, her prison, and she wasn't alone. She had kept James with her, trapped in her twisted love, and now she was turning her attention to me. That night, the house came alive with horrors. The walls groaned and shifted. The floors creaked under the weight of unseen footsteps. I heard whispers, Not just one voice now, but many, all hissing my name, all telling me to leave, to run, to get out before it was too late. But where could I go? The door was locked, the windows sealed. I was trapped. In the bedroom, James was waiting. His face was pale, his eyes wide with something close to madness. "She's here," he whispered, a smile twisting his lips. "She's always been here. And now, she wants you." I backed away, but there was nowhere to run. The shadows moved, swirling around me, and I saw her again, standing in the doorway. This time she was clearer, her face gaunt and hollow, her eyes black pits of rage. She reached out, her fingers like claws, and I felt her cold touch on my skin, pulling me, dragging me toward her. James watched, his expression unreadable, as she leaned in close, her breath icy against my ear. "You'll never take him from me," she hissed. "He's mine, forever." The next morning I woke up alone. The room was cold, the bed empty. I could still feel her touch, still hear her voice in my head. James was gone, and I was alone in the house with her. The door was locked, the windows sealed, and I knew I couldn't escape. I'm writing this now, though I don't know why. Maybe someone will find it, maybe not. But if you do, know that this house is cursed. She's here, and she's never leaving. Neither will I. And James, I don't know where he is, but I hear him sometimes, crying in the dark, calling for his mother. Maybe that's where he's always been. Maybe that's where he'll always be.